Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Manhattan, New York. Ethan Caldwell's Tesla cut through Manhattan traffic like a silver bullet slicing through chaos. At 32, heir to the Caldwell Enterprises empire, he had three obsessions: total control, perfect espresso, and avoiding his mother whenever she mentioned the word marriage. Unfortunately, Eleanor Caldwell had scheduled an urgent family meeting code for "Let's discuss your matrimonial duties" with the Langfords. Damn, Ethan muttered, watching his mother's name flash on the car's display. The fifth call in 10 minutes. The light turned red. Ethan stared at the towering glass monuments around him, each one a testament to American ambition, including the Caldwell Tower piercing the sky 12 blocks away. In exactly 43 minutes, he'd be sitting in the penthouse boardroom while his mother and Beatrice Langford discussed wedding venues and his duty to the family legacy. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. "Mrs. Caldwell moved the meeting up. She's expecting you in 20 minutes. The Langfords are already here." Ethan's jaw tightened. 20 minutes to surrender his freedom to a woman he'd met exactly twice, both times at charity galas where she'd discussed her horses and her Harvard MBA with equal enthusiasm. The light turned green. Ethan floored it. That's when inspiration struck like lightning in a bottle. 3 blocks from Caldwell Tower, Ethan made a decision that would change everything. He yanked the steering wheel hard right, sending his Tesla careening toward the concrete barrier of a construction site. At the last second, he hit the brakes and let physics do the rest. The impact wasn't devastating, just enough to deploy the airbags and create a convincing scene. Ethan slumped against the steering wheel, practicing his best confused expression as concerned pedestrians rushed toward his car. Sir, are you okay?" A construction worker in an orange vest knocked on his window. Ethan blinked slowly, as if struggling to focus. What happened? Where am I?" Within minutes, sirens wailed as an ambulance pulled up. As the paramedics carefully extracted him from the vehicle, Ethan caught sight of his reflection in a broken side mirror, disheveled, with just enough real scrapes to sell the story. "What's your name, sir?" the paramedic asked, shining a penlight in his eyes. Ethan stared at him blankly. I don't know. I can't remember anything." 2 hours later, Mount Sinai Hospital. "Mr. Caldwell, this is highly unusual," Dr. Olivia Wong said, flipping through his chart with a frown. "Your scans show no significant brain trauma, yet you're exhibiting complete retrograde amnesia. Can you tell me anything about yourself?" Ethan, now wearing a hospital gown and looking appropriately vulnerable, shook his head slowly. "Nothing. It's all blank. I know how to speak. I know what things are, but I don't know who I am or where I came from." The truth was, Ethan had spent the last hour watching YouTube videos on amnesia symptoms on his phone when the nurses weren't looking. Method acting at its finest. A commotion outside his room caught his attention. Through the small window, he could see his mother gesticulating wildly at a doctor, her Chanel suit armor gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He absolutely must recover his memory. He has responsibilities. A wedding to plan. "Doctor," Wong noticed his distress. "Don't worry about the woman outside. She claims to be your mother, but we need to be careful with amnesia patients. Sometimes familiar faces can be overwhelming and actually impede recovery." Ethan nodded earnestly. "I appreciate that, doctor. To be honest, she seems intense. I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of pressure." "Perfectly understandable. What we need is a gentle, supportive environment, someone close to you who can help trigger positive memories without overwhelming you." That's when she walked in. Sofia Alvarez burst through the door like a hurricane in scrubs, her dark hair escaping from a messy ponytail and her brown eyes wide with what appeared to be genuine concern. "Ethan, I came as soon as I heard." She rushed to his bedside, taking his hand in both of hers. "Baby, it's me, Sofia, your wife." Ethan stared at her, genuinely speechless for the first time in years. This woman, this beautiful, fierce-looking stranger, was either the best actor he'd ever met or completely insane. "I'm sorry, doctor," Wong said gently, "but there's no record of Mr. Caldwell being married." Sophia's eyes filled with tears that looked remarkably real. We eloped 6 months ago. Ethan wanted to keep it quiet because of his family's business situation. We were planning to announce it after." She gestured helplessly at his bandaged head. Ethan found his voice. "You're my wife?" The word felt foreign on his tongue. Sophia squeezed his hand, and he was surprised by how warm and calloused her palms were working hands. Not like the soft, manicured fingers of the socialites he knew. "Sophia Alvarez Caldwell," she said firmly, then looked at Dr. Wong. "I'm a trauma nurse at Bellevue. I understand what you're dealing with here. Ethan needs familiar, safe surroundings to recover. Our apartment in Brooklyn, that's where he belongs." Through the window, Ethan could see his mother's face turning an alarming shade of purple. Dr. Wong looked between them thoughtfully. "Mrs. Caldwell, if you're indeed his spouse, you would be his primary medical decision-maker, and frankly, a quiet home environment might be exactly what he needs." Sophia turned to Ethan, her expression softening. "Do you want to come home with me? I know you don't remember, but I promise I'll take care of you. I'll help you remember who you are, who we are together." Ethan stared into her eyes, seeing intelligence, kindness, and something else, a spark of mischief that told him this woman was far more than she appeared to be. "Yes," he heard himself say, "I want to go home with you." And that's how Ethan Caldwell, Manhattan's most eligible bachelor and heir to a billion-dollar empire, found himself being wheeled out of Mount Sinai Hospital by a woman he'd never met, who was claiming to be his secret wife. As they passed his mother in the hallway, Sophia leaned down and whispered in his ear, "Just play along, rich boy. We'll figure out the details later." Ethan smiled for the first time in weeks. This was either the biggest mistake of his life or the most brilliant escape plan ever conceived. Either way, it was about to get very interesting. Brooklyn, New York. Sophia's apartment was nothing like Ethan had expected. As she helped him through the door of the fifth-floor walk-up in Park Slope, he found himself in a cozy space filled with mismatched furniture, medical textbooks stacked everywhere, and the lingering aroma of coffee and something that smelled suspiciously like burned toast. "Home, sweet home," Sophia announced, dropping her keys into a ceramic bowl shaped like a stethoscope. "Sorry about the mess. I wasn't exactly expecting to bring my husband home today." Ethan settled onto her second-hand couch, which was surprisingly comfortable despite its obvious age. "Sophia, we need to talk. I may have amnesia, but I'm not stupid. You've never seen me before in your life, have you?" Sophia froze halfway to the kitchen, then slowly turned around. "What makes you say that?" "Because when you grabbed my hand at the hospital, you looked down at it like you were memorizing it for the first time. And you hesitated before saying, 'husband.' Like the word was foreign, a slow smile spread across Sophia's face. "You're more observant than I gave you credit for." She plopped down in the armchair across from him. "Fine, you got me. I have absolutely no idea who you are, Mr. Ethan Caldwell." "Then why?" "Because that woman in the Chanel suit was making the doctors and nurses miserable, demanding they wake you up so you could attend some wedding." Sophia paused, studying his face. "And because you looked terrified when you saw her through that window, like genuinely bone-deep scared, I know that look." Ethan leaned back, reassessing this woman who had just turned his escape plan completely sideways. "So, you decided to rescue a complete stranger by pretending to be his wife?" "I rescue people for a living. It's kind of my thing." Sophia tucked her legs under her. "Plus, I was curious. What kind of situation makes a billionaire fake amnesia to avoid his own mother? How did you know I was faking?" "Please, I've seen actual amnesia patients. You were way too coherent, and your micro-expressions were all wrong. You kept glancing at your phone when you thought no one was looking." Sophia grinned. "Also, you knew your social security number when they asked for insurance information." Ethan couldn't help but laugh. "You're good. I'm the best." Sophia stood up and walked to her kitchen, which was separated from the living room by a breakfast bar. "Coffee? I'm guessing you're used to the expensive stuff, but I've got a decent Ethiopian blend." "That sounds perfect." Ethan watched her move around the small space with efficient grace. "Sophia, I need to ask you something. This arrangement, what do you want out of it?" She paused, coffee scoop halfway to the maker. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you could have just minded your own business at the hospital, but you didn't. You created an elaborate lie to help a stranger escape from his family. People don't do that without a reason." Sophia was quiet for a long moment. The only sound, the gurgling of the coffee maker. Finally, she turned to face him. "My mom died when I was 16, cancer, and in her last weeks, my dad's family kept pushing her to make decisions about treatment, about me, about money, all these big life choices when all she wanted was peace." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. "Sophia, I watched her get weaker and weaker, not from the cancer, but from the pressure, from people who claimed to love her, but wouldn't let her have any control over her own life." Sophia's voice was steady, but Ethan could see the old pain in her eyes. "So, When I saw that woman steamrolling over your medical team, talking about weddings while you were lying in a hospital bed, I couldn't just stand there. The coffee maker beeped, filling the silence. Sophia poured 2 mugs and brought one to Ethan, their fingers brushing as she handed it to him. "That's the real reason," she said quietly. "I don't want anything from you. I couldn't let someone else get bullied into a life they didn't choose." Ethan stared at her, this fierce, complicated woman who had just blown his world apart with a single act of kindness. "Sophia Alvarez, you are either the most noble person I've ever met or completely insane. Why can't I be both?" She settled back into her chair, cradling her mug. "So, what's your exit strategy, rich boy? Eventually, your memory is going to have to come back, right? I was thinking a few weeks long enough for my mother to call off the engagement and find some other way to merge with the Langfords." Ethan sipped his coffee and was surprised by how good it was. "But now we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "You told them we're married, which means they're going to expect us to act married. And my mother," Ethan ran a hand through his hair, "Eleanor Caldwell doesn't give up easily. She's going to investigate you, Sophia. She's going to dig into your background, your family, your job. When she can't find any record of our relationship, she'll expose us," Sophia finished, "and then you'll be right back where you started. Except now you'll have also been caught in a lie." "Exactly." Ethan set down his mug. "I should probably come clean now before this gets more complicated." Sophia was quiet for a moment, then a mischievous smile started playing at the corners of her mouth. Or what? Or we could make this the greatest fake marriage in the history of fake marriages." Sophia's eyes lit up with possibility. "Think about it, Ethan. You need time and space to figure out your life. She paused. "Well, I don't need anything, but this could be fun." "Fun?" Ethan stared at her. "Sophia, we're talking about lying to some of the most powerful people in New York. My mother has private investigators on speed dial, so we make it convincing." Sophia jumped up, suddenly energized. "We create a backstory. We learn everything about each other. We make it so believable that even your mother's investigators won't find any holes." Ethan felt a flutter of something that might have been excitement. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. But we do this right. Full commitment. No half measures." Sophia extended her hand. "What do you say, husband? Ready to build a fake life together?" Ethan looked at her outstretched hand, then up at her face, animated with mischief and determination, and something else he couldn't quite name. 6 hours ago, his biggest problem had been avoiding a boring society, wedding. Now he was contemplating an elaborate deception with a woman who made him feel more alive in one afternoon than he had in years. He took her hand. "Let's do it." Sophia's grin was brilliant. "Excellent. First order of business. You need to learn how we met. And Ethan, the story I'm about to tell you is going to be completely ridiculous." "How ridiculous?" "Well, it involves a food truck, a runaway dog, and you accidentally proposing to me in front of 50 strangers." Sophia settled back into her chair, looking thoroughly pleased with herself. "Are you ready for your origin story, Mr. Caldwell?" Ethan couldn't stop smiling. "I can't wait." Outside, the Brooklyn evening was settling in, and somewhere in Manhattan, Eleanor Caldwell was probably having her lawyers run background checks. But in this small apartment filled with medical textbooks and mismatched furniture, Ethan felt safer than he had in years. This was either going to be the best decision of his life or the most spectacular disaster he'd ever been part of. He was betting on both. Brooklyn, New York. The next morning, Ethan woke up on Sophia's couch to the sound of her singing off-key in the shower and the smell of actual breakfast cooking. For a moment, he forgot where he was and why he was there. Then reality crashed back. He was a fake amnesia patient, living with his pretend wife. And today, they were going to construct an elaborate lie that would fool some of the most suspicious people in Manhattan. "Morning, sunshine," Sophia said, emerging from the bathroom wearing scrubs and a bright smile, her damp hair twisted into a professional bun. "Ready for your first day of marriage boot camp?" Ethan sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Do you always wake up this cheerful? Hospital shifts start early. You learn to function on coffee and pure determination." Sophia handed him a plate of scrambled eggs and toast that looked infinitely better than anything his private chef had ever made. "Eat up. We have a lot of work to do. Before we start creating our fictional romance, I have a question." Ethan took a bite and tried not to moan at how good it tasted. "How did you learn to cook like this?" "YouTube and necessity. When you're working 18-hour shifts, you either learn to make food that actually nourishes you, or you survive on vending machine coffee and regret." Sophia settled across from him with her own plate. "Speaking of which, What do you usually eat? Whatever my chef prepares, usually something minimal. Lots of microgreens and philosophical presentations. Sophia stared at him. Your food has philosophical presentations. Last week, I had deconstructed nostalgia for dinner. It was 3 cherry tomatoes and a memory of my childhood arranged on a plate that cost more than most people's rent. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Sophia shook her head. Okay, new rule. While you're living here, you eat actual food. Food that fills you up and makes you happy. Food that doesn't require a liberal arts degree to understand. Ethan found himself grinning. Deal. Now, about this origin story, right? Sophia jumped up and pulled a notebook from her bag. I spent most of last night working this out. Are you ready for the epic tale of how Ethan and Sophia fell in love? I'm terrified and intrigued. Sophia cleared her throat dramatically. Picture this. It's a gorgeous Saturday afternoon in Central Park. You're there for your monthly Connecting with Common People photo op that your PR team makes you do. That's disturbingly accurate. I'm there with my friend Isabella's dog, Max. He's this massive Great Dane with the emotional intelligence of a toddler and zero impulse control. Isabella's working a double shift, so I'm dog-sitting. Sophia's eyes lit up as she got into the story. You're standing near the Bethesda fountain, looking very important in your $1,000 casual wear, when Max sees this food truck and decides he needs Korean barbecue tacos immediately. Ethan was already laughing. Please tell me this gets worse. Oh, it gets so much worse. Max breaks free from his leash and charges toward the food truck like a furry missile. He crashes into the back of your legs, sending you flying face first into the side of the truck. But here's the beautiful part. You don't hit the metal. You hit me. I'm standing in line, minding my own business, when suddenly there's a very expensive human projectile knocking me backward. We both go down in this ridiculous tangle of limbs, and when we land, you're on top of me, staring into my eyes. And there's this moment. Sophia paused, and Ethan noticed her cheeks had turned slightly pink, this moment where the world just stops. And then Max, being the romantic genius that he is, starts licking both our faces at the same time. That's disgusting and perfect. But wait, there's more. Sophia flipped a page in her notebook. The food truck owner, this sweet Korean grandmother named Mrs. Lee, sees this whole thing happen and decides we're destined to be together. She starts yelling at the crowd in Korean and English about how love has literally crashed into her business. Ethan set down his fork, completely absorbed. What happens next? Well, you're mortified. You keep apologizing and trying to pay for everyone's food and asking if I need medical attention. I'm laughing so hard I can barely breathe because this is the most ridiculous thing that's ever happened to me. And Mrs. Lee keeps pushing tacos at us and insisting that when the universe sends love crashing into your life, you don't question it. You just eat good food and enjoy the ride. And that's when I proposed. Sophia's grin was wicked. Not exactly. See, Mrs. Lee has this tradition where couples who have their meet cute at her truck get a free meal on their wedding day. So, she starts loudly explaining this to the crowd that's gathered to watch the chaos. And you, being mortified and wanting to make amends for nearly concussing me, shout out, "Then we'll have to get married so you can make good on that promise." Ethan stared at her. In front of 50 strangers? In front of 50 strangers. While covered in Max drool and Korean barbecue sauce, Sophia was fully animated now, gesturing wildly. The crowd starts cheering. Mrs. Lee starts crying happy tears, and I'm standing there thinking, either this guy is completely insane, or this is the most romantic thing that's ever happened to me. And what did you say? I said, well, I guess we better make sure Mrs. Lee has enough kimchi for the reception. Sophia's voice got softer. And then you laughed this real, genuine laugh that made your whole face change, and I thought maybe crazy isn't always a bad thing. Ethan was quiet for a moment, struck by how real the story felt, coming from Sophia's lips. When did we supposedly start dating? That day, you asked if you could take me to dinner to properly apologize for the tackle. I said yes, but only if we went somewhere that served actual portions and didn't require a dress code. Sophia consulted her notes. Our first date was at this tiny Italian place in Little Italy. You ordered spaghetti and got sauce on your designer shirt, and I knew you were a keeper. How long did we date before eloping? 6 months. We kept it quiet because Sophia hesitated. Because your family didn't approve of a nurse from Brooklyn, and my friends thought I was crazy for dating someone from your world. So, we decided to hell with everyone else and ran off to City Hall on a Tuesday morning. The story hung in the air between them. And Ethan found himself wishing parts of it were true, the image of Sophia laughing while covered in barbecue sauce. The idea of finding someone who could make him laugh like that. "Sophia, this story is brilliant," he said finally, "but how are we going to make it stick? People are going to ask for details, photos, witnesses. Way ahead of you." Sophia pulled out her phone. "My friend Isabella actually does have a Great Dane named Max. And Mrs. Lee's truck is real. She parks outside Mount Sinai on Wednesdays. I figured we could get some photos there for authenticity. You want us to recreate our fake meet cute? I want us to sell this thing properly. If we're going to lie to your mother, we're going to lie like professionals." Sophia's expression turned serious. "But Ethan, I need you to understand something. Once we do this, there's no going back. We'll be committed to this charade until you're ready to recover your memory. That could be weeks." Ethan looked around Sophia's small apartment, at the medical textbooks and mismatched furniture, at the woman who had turned his life upside down with a single impulsive decision. In his real life, he made calculated moves, strategic plans, safe choices. Everything was controlled, predictable, boring. This was the opposite of safe. This was chaos and possibility, and the most alive he'd felt in years. "Sophia Alvarez Caldwell," he said, standing up and extending his hand. "I think it's time we went to meet Mrs. Lee." Sophia's smile was radiant as she shook his hand. "Welcome to your new life, husband. Try not to tackle any more innocent bystanders. No promises." "Apparently, that's how I show affection." As they headed for the door, Ethan caught sight of himself in Sophia's hallway mirror. He looked different, somehow lighter, more relaxed, like he was wearing a life that actually fit him. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. "Your mother is demanding a meeting with your wife. She wants to discuss your recovery process. What should I tell her?" Ethan showed the message to Sophia, who read it and grinned. "Tell her," Sophia said, "that Mrs. Sophia Alvarez Caldwell would be delighted to meet her mother-in-law, but it'll have to be somewhere public. Hospitals make me nervous after the accident. You're enjoying this?" "I'm terrifying myself with how much I'm enjoying this." Sophia grabbed her jacket. "Come on, fake husband. Let's go build us a love story." Various locations. New York City. The Korean barbecue food truck was exactly where Sophia had promised it would be. Parked outside Mount Sinai Hospital, surrounded by the usual crowd of medical staff grabbing lunch between shifts, Mrs. Lee, a tiny woman with steel gray hair and the commanding presence of someone who had spent decades feeding hungry people, looked up as Ethan and Sophia approached. "You must be the couple," she announced before they could even introduce themselves. "Isabella told me you were coming. Very romantic story." "Yes. Love crashes into your life like a runaway truck." Ethan shot Sophia a look that clearly said, "You coached her," and Sophia's innocent shrug confirmed his suspicions. "Mrs. Lee, this is Ethan," Sophia said, sliding her arm through his with practiced ease. "The one who tackled me by your truck 6 months ago." "Ah, yes, the rich boy who cannot stand properly near food trucks." Mrs. Lee clapped her hands together. "Very handsome, but clumsy. Good thing my Sophia has strong bones." Ethan found himself grinning despite the absurdity of the situation. "Mrs. Lee, I want to apologize again for the chaos I caused that day. And thank you for bringing us together. No apology needed. Best advertising I ever had. Now everyone knows Mrs. Lee's truck is where true love lives." She winked at Sophia. "You bring photo person?" Sophia held up her phone. "Just us today. We wanted some casual shots to send to Ethan's family." "Good. Good. But first you eat. Cannot take love photos on empty stomach. Makes you look sad and hungry instead of happy and in love." For the next 20 minutes, Mrs. Lee plied them with Korean barbecue tacos, while regaling them with stories about all the couples who had met at her truck. Ethan found himself relaxing into the role, laughing at Sophia's jokes, catching her hand when she gestured too enthusiastically and nearly knocked over her drink. It should have felt forced, artificial. Instead, it felt surprisingly natural. "Now photos," Mrs. Lee declared, shooing them to the side of the truck. "Sophia, you stand here. Ethan, you pretend to fall into her again, but gentle this time. I cannot afford lawsuits." They staged a dozen photos. Ethan accidentally bumping into Sophia, both of them laughing and covered in imaginary barbecue sauce. Recreating their supposed first meeting with theatrical flair. In one shot, Sophia's hands were braced against Ethan's chest as he studied her, and for a moment, the acting fell away entirely. "Perfect," Mrs. Lee announced. snapping the photo on Sophia's phone. You look at each other like you see a whole future together. Very good acting or very good marriage, maybe both. As they walked away from the truck, bellies full and phones loaded with evidence of their fictional romance, Ethan felt the weight of what they were about to attempt settling over him. "Sophia, we need to talk strategy," he said, as they found a bench in a nearby pocket park. "My mother isn't just suspicious. She's Eleanor Caldwell. She once had a potential business partner investigated because she didn't like the way he tied his shoes." Sophia pulled out her notebook, which Ethan was learning was her equivalent of a security blanket. "Then we need to be bulletproof. Tell me everything about your world, every detail, every expectation, every social rule I need to know." For the next hour, Ethan gave Sophia a crash course in Manhattan elite society. He explained the subtle hierarchies of charity boards, the difference between old money and new money, the unspoken rules about where you summered and which schools your children attended. Sophia took notes like she was studying for medical boards, asking sharp questions that revealed just how intelligent she really was. "So, your mother's main objection to me would be—" "What, exactly?" Sophia asked. Pen poised over her notebook. "Your background, your profession, the fact that you're not from an established family." Ethan hesitated. "Sophia, I need you to understand these people can be cruel. They'll smile to your face and tear you apart behind your back." "Ethan, I've been an ER nurse in New York for 8 years. I've been yelled at by drug addicts, puked on by college students, and threatened by people having the worst days of their lives. I think I can handle some snooty socialites. It's different. They'll attack things you can't defend against your father's job, your apartment, the way you pronounce certain words." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I don't want you to get hurt because of my mess." Sophia was quiet for a moment, studying his face. "You're protecting me. I'm trying to." "That's sweet and completely unnecessary." Sophia closed her notebook with a snap. "Ethan, you're forgetting something important. I chose to walk into that hospital room. I chose to claim I was your wife. I'm not some delicate flower who needs shielding from your mother's disapproval. I know that. But nothing. We're partners in this now." Sophia's voice was firm. "Which means you tell me everything I need to know and trust me to handle myself. Deal?" Ethan looked at her, this fierce, complicated woman who had turned his life upside down in the space of 2 days, and felt something shift in his chest. "Deal. But Sophia, when my mother inevitably says something cutting about your background or your family, remember that none of it reflects how I see you. And how do you see me?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with more weight than their fake marriage probably warranted. Ethan found himself looking at Sophia's face, really looking up. The intelligence in her dark eyes, the determined set of her jaw, the small scar above her left eyebrow that spoke of some childhood adventure. She was beautiful. But more than that, she was real in a way that made everyone else in his life feel like paper cutouts. "I see someone brave enough to rescue a stranger," he said finally. "Someone who makes the best scrambled eggs in New York and isn't afraid to call me on my nonsense. Someone who," he paused, surprised by his own honesty, "makes me remember what it feels like to actually live instead of just existing." Sophia's cheeks flushed pink, and for a moment, the pretense fell away entirely. They were just Ethan and Sophia, sitting on a bench in a pocket park. Discovering that their fake relationship was developing some very real complications, Ethan's phone rang, breaking the spell. His assistant's name flashed on the screen. "Mr. Caldwell, your mother has scheduled dinner tonight at Les Bernardins. She expects you and your wife at 7 o'clock. Should I confirm?" Ethan looked at Sophia, who was already nodding with the determination of someone preparing for battle. "Confirm it," Ethan said. "We'll be there." "Excellent. And sir, she's invited the Langfords as well. I thought you should know." Ethan's stomach dropped. "The Langfords will be there?" "Yes, sir. Apparently, Mrs. Caldwell thought it would be appropriate for them to meet your wife, given the circumstances of your recent marriage." Ethan hung up and turned to Sophia, who was watching his face with growing concern. "How bad?" she asked. "Remember how I told you my mother was trying to arrange a marriage between me and Charlotte Langford, the horse girl with the Harvard MBA? That's the one. Well, tonight we get to have dinner with her, her parents, and my mother, all of whom are expecting to meet my secret wife, while simultaneously trying to figure out why I'm not married to Charlotte instead." Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Then she started laughing. "Sophia, this isn't funny. This is a disaster. No, this is perfect." Sophia stood up, suddenly energized. "Don't you see? Your mother is testing us. She wants to see if our relationship can survive, being put under a microscope next to the woman she actually chose for you. And you think that's good because it means she's taking us seriously enough to try to break us up." Sophia grinned. If she thought I was just some random gold digger who would disappear on her own, she wouldn't bother with the psychological warfare. Ethan stared at her. "You're enjoying this?" "I'm loving this." "Ethan, do you realize what we're about to do? We're going to walk into the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan and convince some of the most powerful people in New York that a billionaire heir and a Brooklyn nurse are madly in love. We're going to sell the performance of a lifetime to an audience that wants nothing more than to see us fail. And if we don't pull it off?" Sophia stepped closer. Close enough that Ethan could smell her shampoo and see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "Then we go down swinging. But Ethan, we're going to pull it off because we're not just selling them a story about Ethan and Sophia. We're selling them a story about love that crashes into your life when you least expect it and changes everything. You make it sound easy. It's not easy. It's terrifying and exhilarating, and completely insane." Sophia reached up and straightened his collar with an intimacy that felt shockingly natural. "But that's what makes it real. That's what's going to sell it." Ethan caught her hands in his, ostensibly to stop her fussing with his shirt, but really because he suddenly needed to touch her. "Sophia, what are we doing here?" "Really? I don't know," she admitted, "but I know I don't want to stop." They stood there for a moment, hands linked, the weight of their fake marriage and very real attraction creating a tension that neither of them was quite ready to name. "So," Sophia said finally, stepping back with a brightness that didn't quite reach her eyes, "what does one wear to psychological warfare at Le Bernardin? Something that says, 'I belong here, but I'm not trying too hard,'" Ethan replied, grateful for the return to practical matters. "Sophia, I should probably buy you something appropriate. Designer dress, jewelry, shoes." "Absolutely not. If I show up looking like I stepped out of Vogue, your mother will know immediately that this is fake. I need to look like myself, just elevated." Sophia pulled out her phone. "I have a friend who works in fashion. She'll help me find something that's appropriate but authentic." "Are you sure?" "I could easily." "I'm sure. Besides, isn't the whole point that you fell in love with a nurse from Brooklyn? If I show up looking like Charlotte Langford, we've already lost." Ethan nodded slowly. "You're right, as usual. I'm always right. It's one of my most annoying qualities." Sophia grinned. "Pick me up at an M. Tigapuluh. That'll give us time to get our story straight on the way there." "Sophia, thank you for all of this. I know you could walk away at any time, and I know I have no right to ask you to go through with tonight. But," Sophia silenced him by pressing her finger to his lips. "Ethan Caldwell, you're not getting rid of me that easily. We're in this together now." As Ethan watched her walk away, her notebook clutched to her chest and her dark hair catching the afternoon sunlight, he realized that what had started as an escape plan had become something much more complicated. He was falling for his fake wife. And tonight, in front of his mother and the woman he was supposed to marry, he was going to have to pretend that his feelings were just an act. This was either going to be the greatest performance of his life or the most spectacular disaster he'd ever been part of. Possibly both. Le Bernardin, Manhattan. Evening. Ethan adjusted his tie for the 7th time as the black town car pulled up to Le Bernardin's elegant entrance. Beside him, Sophia sat with the poised stillness of someone preparing for surgery, calm on the surface, but alert to every detail. She looked stunning. Her friend had worked magic, finding a navy blue dress that was sophisticated enough for Le Bernardin, but unmistakably, Sophia fitted, but not tight, elegant, but not ostentatious. Her jewelry was simple but real. A pair of small diamond studs that had been her grandmother's, and a delicate gold bracelet that caught the light when she moved. She'd left her hair down in soft waves, and Ethan found himself fighting the urge to reach over and touch it. "You look beautiful," he said quietly as the driver came around to open their door. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Sophia replied, smoothing his lapel in a gesture that was becoming second nature. "Ready to meet your other wife?" "She's not my wife." "You are." The words came out more intensely than Ethan had intended, and Sophia's eyes widened slightly. "Ethan, I know this is fake, but tonight, in there, you're my wife. The only one that matters." Ethan caught her hand and squeezed it. "Whatever happens, whatever they say, remember that." Sophia nodded, and Ethan saw something flicker in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe, or something deeper that she wasn't ready to name. The maitre d' led them through Le Bernardin's hushed, elegant dining room to a corner table where 3 people were already seated. Eleanor Caldwell rose first, resplendent in Chanel and pearls, her silver hair pulled back in a chignon that spoke of decades of absolute authority. Behind her, Robert and Lillian Langford, old money personified in cashmere and understated diamonds. And between them, Charlotte Langford herself. Ethan had forgotten how striking Charlotte was, tall and blonde with the kind of refined beauty that graced charity gala photos. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. Everything about her screamed breeding, education, appropriate choice. She was exactly the kind of woman Eleanor Caldwell had always envisioned as a daughter-in-law. She was also everything Sophia wasn't. Ethan, darling. Eleanor's voice could have frosted the windows. How wonderful that you're feeling well enough to join us, and this must be your wife. The pause before the word wife was so slight that anyone else might have missed it. Sophia didn't. Mrs. Caldwell, Sophia said, extending her hand with a warm smile. It's such a pleasure to finally meet you. Ethan has told me so much about you. How interesting. He's never mentioned you at all. Eleanor's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. But then, we've all been so worried about his condition. Memory loss is such a tricky thing. Please sit. Robert Langford interjected, rising with old-world courtesy. You must be Sophia. I'm Robert, and this is my wife, Lillian, and our daughter Charlotte. Charlotte stood as well, and Ethan felt Sophia tense almost imperceptibly beside him, up close. The difference between the two women was even more stark. Charlotte moved with the fluid confidence of someone who had never doubted her place in the world, while Sophia's poise was more hard-won, built from years of holding her own in difficult situations. Sophia, Charlotte said, her smile perfectly pleasant and completely unreadable. What an unexpected pleasure. I've been so curious to meet the woman who captured Ethan's heart. The feeling is mutual, Sophia replied smoothly. Ethan mentioned you were old family friends. Very old friends, Eleanor said, settling back into her chair like a queen holding court. Charlotte and Ethan have known each other since childhood. We always thought, well, expectations change, don't they? The waiter appeared, providing a momentary reprieve as they ordered drinks and appetizers. Ethan found himself hyper-aware of every interaction. The way Sophia held her menu, the slight tightening around Eleanor's eyes when Sophia ordered wine instead of champagne, Charlotte's calculating gaze as she studied Sophia's dress and jewelry. So, Sophia, Lillian Langford said once the waiter had departed. Ethan's assistant mentioned you're a nurse. How noble of you. The word noble dripped with condescension, but Sophia's smile never wavered. I work in trauma surgery at Bellevue. It's challenging work, but incredibly rewarding. There's something special about being able to help people in their most vulnerable moments. I imagine it must be quite intense, Charlotte added. So different from what we're used to. Do you find it difficult to switch between that world and this one? Ethan felt his jaw clench, but Sophia just laughed, a genuine, warm sound that somehow made the entire table seem less formal. You know, people assume there's this huge divide, but medicine teaches you that people are people, regardless of their bank accounts. A heart attack doesn't care if you're wearing Chanel or scrubs. Sophia's eyes met Eleanor's steadily, and love certainly doesn't check your credit score before it strikes. How romantic, Eleanor said dryly. Speaking of romance, I'm curious about your courtship. It must have been quite a whirlwind for Ethan to elope without mentioning you to his family. Here it was the first real test. Ethan felt Sophia's hand find his under the table, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture that felt both comforting and intimate. Sometimes love doesn't follow a convenient timeline, Sophia said. When we met, Ethan was going through a difficult period. He'd been so focused on business obligations and family expectations that he'd forgotten what it felt like to just be himself. And what did you see in him? Charlotte asked, her tone carefully neutral. Besides the obvious advantages, of course, the comment was expertly crafted, just insulting enough to rattle Sophia while maintaining plausible deniability. But Sophia didn't flinch. I saw someone who had lost himself, she said quietly, her thumb tracing across Ethan's knuckles. Someone brilliant and kind who was suffocating under the weight of other people's dreams for his life. I saw a man who could laugh at himself when he got barbecue sauce on his designer shirt, who remembered my coffee order after one date, who looked at me like I was the most fascinating person in the room. Ethan stared at her, struck by how much of that felt true. When had she learned to read him so accurately? How lovely, Eleanor said. And your family? I'm sure they were thrilled about the sudden marriage. Sophia's grip on Ethan's hand tightened almost imperceptibly. My parents are both gone, Mrs. Caldwell. My father passed when I was 22, and my mother when I was 16, so it was just me making the decision. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken implications. No family meant no connections, no social standing, no one to vouch for her background or character. "I'm so sorry for your loss," Lillian said, and she seemed to mean it. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was, but it taught me to value the family you choose, not just the one you're born into." Sophia's gaze moved around the table. "Ethan and I chose each other in a hospital chapel at 2:00 the morning, with just a judge and 2 nurses as witnesses. It wasn't traditional or convenient, but it was real. A hospital chapel." Charlotte's eyebrows rose slightly. "How unique." "Ethan had just gotten some difficult news about a business deal," Sophia continued, building their story with expert precision. "He was devastated, questioning everything about his life and his priorities. We'd been talking about marriage, but that night he said he didn't want to wait another day to make me his family. He said he wanted to start the next chapter of his life with me by his side." Ethan found himself nodding along, remembering details of a wedding that had never happened. Sophia was painting a picture of a man choosing love over obligation, intimacy over spectacle. It was exactly the kind of romantic gesture the Ethan Caldwell his mother knew would never make. "How impulsive," Eleanor observed. "Not like Ethan at all." "Maybe that's what made it so perfect," Sophia said. "Sometimes the most important decisions can't be planned or strategized. Sometimes you have to trust your heart." The appetizers arrived, providing another brief respite. Ethan watched Sophia navigate the array of silverware with confidence. Not the innate ease of someone raised with formal dining, but the quick adaptability of someone who paid attention and learned fast. "Sophia," Robert said as they began eating, "what are your thoughts on Ethan's recovery? The amnesia must be frightening for both of you." "It's been challenging," Sophia admitted, "but in some ways, it's given us a chance to fall in love all over again. Ethan is remembering things about himself that maybe he'd forgotten: his sense of humor, his compassion, his ability to find joy in simple things. The man I'm getting back is even better than the one I married." Ethan felt something twist in his chest. The way Sophia talked about him, it was how he'd always wanted someone to see him, not as an heir or a business asset or a strategic alliance, but as a person worth loving for his own sake. "And what happens when his memory returns fully?" Charlotte asked. "Will you be able to adjust to the demands of his real life?" It was a perfectly crafted question, implying that Sophia was either naive about what she'd gotten herself into or deliberately taking advantage of Ethan's vulnerable state. Sophia set down her fork and looked directly at Charlotte. "I think there might be some confusion about what Ethan's real life is. His real life is the one where he's happy, where he can breathe, where he doesn't have to pretend to be someone else to meet other people's expectations." "How idealistic," Eleanor said. "But Ethan has responsibilities, obligations that existed long before his accident." "Of course he does, and I would never ask him to abandon them." Sophia's voice was steady, but Ethan could see the steel in her eyes. "But there's a difference between fulfilling your responsibilities and letting them consume you. Ethan is brilliant at what he does. He doesn't need to sacrifice his soul to be successful. And you feel qualified to make that determination?" Eleanor's mask was slipping, revealing the ice beneath. "You've known my son for 6 months. I've known him for 32 years. You've known the person you shaped him to be." Sophia replied quietly. "I know the person he chose to become when he was free to choose." The tension at the table was thick enough to cut with a knife. Ethan could see his mother's growing anger, Charlotte's calculating assessment, the Langfords' uncomfortable realization that they were witnessing a family drama they hadn't signed up for. "How fascinating," Eleanor said, her voice arctic. "And what exactly do you think Ethan chose when he married you?" "Love," Sophia said simply. "He chose love over duty, heart over strategy. A future he wanted instead of one that was expected of him." "How wonderfully naive." Eleanor's smile was razor sharp. "Tell me, Sophia, what do you know about the Caldwell family business? About the merger negotiations that have been in progress for 18 months? About the fact that Ethan's marriage was supposed to seal a partnership that would secure both families' futures?" Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. His mother was playing hardball now, laying out exactly why his relationship with Sophia was inconvenient. "I know that love shouldn't be a business transaction," Sophia said firmly, "and I know that Ethan is talented enough to succeed without sacrificing his personal happiness on the altar of corporate strategy." "Love," Eleanor laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How quaint. Tell me, dear, what happens when love isn't enough? When the novelty wears off and you're faced with the reality of what this life actually requires?" When you realize that being Ethan's wife means charity boards and social obligations and representing a family legacy that goes back generations, then I'll learn. Sophia said simply, the same way I learned to save lives and comfort, grieving families and function on 3 hours of sleep, people are capable of growing into the roles they choose. Choose, Charlotte repeated thoughtfully. That's an interesting word. Because from where I sit, it looks less like Ethan chose you, and more like you took advantage of a man in a vulnerable state. The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Ethan felt his protective instincts surge, but Sophia beat him to the response. I understand why you might see it that way, Sophia said, her voice perfectly calm. If I were in your position, watching someone I cared about with a stranger, I might wonder the same thing, but here's what I know. Ethan's amnesia didn't change his fundamental character. The man who loves me, who chose to marry me, who makes me laugh every single day, that's not a product of memory loss. That's who he really is when he's not trying to be who everyone else expects him to be. She turned to look at Ethan, and for a moment, the rest of the table faded away. The Ethan I fell in love with is brilliant and kind and funny and real. He cares about people, not just profits. He's generous with his time and his attention and his heart. And if that's not the Ethan you know, Sophia's gaze moved back to Eleanor. Maybe that says more about the expectations you placed on him than it does about my influence. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan stared at Sophia, overwhelmed by the realization that every word she'd just spoken felt true. She wasn't just defending their fake marriage, she was defending him, the real him, in a way no one ever had. Well, Robert Langford said finally, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. Perhaps we should order our entrees. The rest of the dinner passed in a haze of polite conversation and underlying tension. Eleanor made several more attempts to rattle Sophia, probing about her background, her finances, her long-term plans. Each time, Sophia deflected with grace and intelligence, never losing her temper or revealing the cracks in their story. Charlotte, meanwhile, had shifted tactics. Instead of attacking Sophia directly, she began reminiscing about shared memories with Ethan, childhood summers, family vacations, inside jokes from their youth. It was a masterful strategy, highlighting the deep history she shared with Ethan while emphasizing Sophia's position as an outsider. But Ethan found himself barely listening to Charlotte's stories. Instead, he was watching Sophia the way she genuinely listened when Lillian talked about her charity work, how she made Robert laugh with a story about her most challenging patient, her ability to find common ground, even with people who clearly disapproved of her. She was magnificent, and she was defending a marriage that didn't exist and a man she'd known for 2 days with the fierce loyalty of someone who actually loved him. The realization hit Ethan like a physical blow. He was falling in love with Sofia Alvarez, not the character she was playing, not the convenience she represented, but the real woman, complicated and brave and genuine and utterly unlike anyone he'd ever known. And in about an hour, they would go back to her apartment and continue pretending that none of this meant anything. Ethan, Sophia's voice pulled him back to the present. Are you feeling all right? You look a little pale. I'm fine, he said quickly, realizing that everyone at the table was looking at him with various degrees of concern. Just tired. It's been a long day. Of course, Eleanor said, her tone softening slightly. You're still recovering. Perhaps you should head home and rest. Good idea, Sophia agreed, already signaling for the check. It's been such a pleasure meeting all of you. As they said their goodbyes and made their way toward the exit, Ethan felt the weight of the evening settling over him. They had survived Eleanor's interrogation and Charlotte's psychological warfare. Their story had held up under scrutiny. By all measures, the evening had been a success. So why did he feel like everything had just become infinitely more complicated? In the back of the town car, Sophia finally allowed herself to slump against the leather seats. The polished performance mask slipped away, revealing exhaustion and something that might have been vulnerability. Well, she said quietly, that was intense. Sophia, you were incredible in there. Ethan turned to face her fully. The way you handled my mother, the things you said about me, I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. That's what partners do, they have each other's backs. Sophia's smile was tired but genuine. Although, I have to admit, your mother is terrifying. And Charlotte, Ethan said quietly, Charlotte is everything my mother wanted for me. Beautiful, accomplished, from the right family. She would have been the perfect strategic marriage. Would have been. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, watching the city lights blur past the window. Sophia, what we did tonight, What you said in there about choosing love over duty, about being free to be yourself, do you really believe that's possible? Sophia studied his face in the dim light of the car. I believe that life is too short to spend it being someone else's version of who you should be. I believe that happiness matters more than other people's expectations. And I believe, she paused, seeming to choose her words carefully, that everyone deserves to be loved for who they really are, not who they pretend to be. Even fake husbands? Especially fake husbands. Sophia's smile was soft, but there was something serious in her eyes. Ethan, what happens tomorrow? Your mother is going to expect us to keep up this charade. But tonight felt different. Ethan knew what she meant. Somewhere between the appetizers and the entree, their fake marriage had started feeling dangerously real. The way Sophia had defended him, the protective fury he'd felt when Charlotte questioned her motives, the ease with which they'd presented themselves as a couple, none of it had felt like acting. I don't know, he said honestly. Sophia, I need to tell you something. Tonight, watching you in there, seeing you stand up to my mother and defend our relationship, I realized something. What? Ethan took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to say would change everything between them. I realized that I don't want this to be fake anymore. Sophia went very still. Ethan, I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. I know this whole thing started as an elaborate lie to get me out of an arranged marriage. Ethan reached for her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. But Sophia, what I feel for you, that's not fake. The way you make me laugh, the way you see me, the way you make everything feel possible, that's real. This is complicated, Sophia said quietly. I know. We're lying to your family, to mine, to everyone. I know. And you have amnesia. Fake amnesia. But still, you're not making decisions from a place of clarity right now. Sophia, Ethan lifted their joined hands and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. The amnesia is fake. But this, what I feel for you, this is the most real thing in my life. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, and Ethan could practically hear her thinking. What are you asking me, Ethan? I'm asking if there's any chance that what I'm feeling might be mutual. I'm asking if you'd be willing to see where this goes when we're not performing for other people. Ethan's heart was hammering against his ribs. I'm asking if you'd consider making this marriage real. The car pulled up to Sophia's building before she could answer. As they climbed the stairs to her fifth-floor apartment, Ethan found himself holding his breath, waiting for her response. It wasn't until they were inside, with the door closed and the outside world locked away, that Sophia finally spoke. Ethan, I need you to understand something. What happened tonight, the things I said about you, I wasn't entirely acting either. Ethan felt his heart skip. Sophia, but this is dangerous territory we're walking into. If we cross this line, there's no going back to being fake spouses playing pretend. Sophia turned to face him fully. Are you sure this is what you want? Because in a few weeks, when your memory comes back, you're going to have to choose between the life you've always known and whatever this is between us. I've already chosen, Ethan said without hesitation. Sophia, I chose you the moment you walked into that hospital room and claimed to be my wife. I chose you when I got in that car with you, instead of going home to my mother. I chose you tonight when I watched you defend our relationship, like it was worth fighting for. Sophia stared at him, her dark eyes searching his face for something sincerity maybe, or the courage to take the leap he was asking her to take. This could end very badly, she warned, or it could be the beginning of something extraordinary. Sophia was quiet for another long moment. Then, slowly, she stepped closer. Ethan Caldwell, she said, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. You are either going to be the best decision I've ever made or the most spectacular mistake of my life. Which way are you betting? Sophia's smile was soft and uncertain and full of possibility. I'm betting on us. And then she kissed him. It wasn't a performance kiss, staged for an audience, or designed to sell their story. It was real and tentative and full of all the complicated emotions they'd been dancing around for 3 days. Ethan felt something settle into place in his chest, like a puzzle piece he hadn't known was missing. When they finally broke apart, Sophia rested her forehead against his. So, she said quietly, I guess we're really married now. I guess we are, Ethan agreed. How do you feel about that, Mrs. Caldwell? Terrified, exhilarated, completely out of my depth. Sophia's smile was radiant. So, basically, exactly how I felt when I walked into that hospital room and claimed to be your wife. Any regrets? Ask me again in the morning, Sophia said, but she was still smiling. Right now, I'm too busy falling in love with my fake husband to think clearly. Good, Ethan said, pulling her closer. Because I've been falling in love with my fake wife since the moment she decided to rescue me. Outside, Manhattan glittered in the darkness, full of possibilities and complications, and the promise of tomorrow. But inside Sophia's small apartment, with her arms around him and her heart beating against his chest, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Fake marriage or real, convenient lie or inconvenient truth. They were in this together now. And that felt like the most honest thing he'd ever done. Brooklyn and Manhattan, New York. 2 weeks later, Sophia woke up to the smell of coffee and something that might have been pancakes, which was suspicious for 2 reasons. First, Ethan had never successfully made pancakes in the 2 weeks he'd been living in her apartment. And second, it was barely 6:00 the morning. She found him in her tiny kitchen, standing over the stove with intense concentration, wearing nothing but pajama pants and an apron that read, "Kiss the Cook," a gag gift from her friend Isabella that Ethan had embraced with characteristic determination to master domestic life. "Good morning, wife," he said without turning around, and Sophia felt the familiar flutter in her stomach that accompanied that word. Even after 2 weeks of playing house, she still wasn't used to how right it sounded coming from his lips. "Good morning, husband," she replied, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind and pressing a kiss to his shoulder blade. "What's the occasion? Did you finally figure out how to flip pancakes without launching them at the ceiling? I'll have you know I've only lost 2 this morning, which is a significant improvement." Ethan leaned back into her embrace. "And the occasion is that my beautiful wife has been working double shifts for 3 days straight, and she deserves actual breakfast instead of coffee and whatever she can grab from the hospital cafeteria." Sophia tightened her arms around him, marveling at how domestic bliss had snuck up on them. The past 2 weeks had been a strange and wonderful dance of learning to live together while maintaining their elaborate charade for the outside world. Ethan had thrown himself into the role of recovering amnesia patient with the same intensity he brought to everything else, attending follow-up appointments, meeting with Dr. Wong, and gradually remembering details of his life with carefully orchestrated confusion. But the real magic happened in the quiet moments. Ethan learning to cook in her cramped kitchen, Sophia teaching him to fold laundry properly, both of them discovering the strange intimacy of sharing space with another person. They'd fallen into routines without discussing them. Ethan made coffee in the mornings. Sophia cooked dinner when she wasn't working. They took turns choosing what to watch on her ancient television. It felt remarkably like a real marriage. "Ethan," Sophia said, reluctance heavy in her voice. "We need to talk about something." She felt him tense slightly. "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous, just necessary." Sophia stepped back, giving him space to turn around. "Your mother called yesterday while you were at your appointment. She wants to have lunch today, just the 2 of us." Ethan's face went carefully blank, the same expression he wore when dealing with business problems. "Did she say why?" "She said she wants to get to know her daughter-in-law better without the pressure of a group setting." Sophia moved to pour herself coffee, needing something to do with her hands. "Ethan, I think she's planning something. Eleanor is always planning something." Ethan plated the pancakes with the precision of someone who had learned that Sophia appreciated presentation almost as much as taste. "What did you tell her?" "I said, yes. Of course, I can't exactly refuse to have lunch with my mother-in-law without raising suspicions." Sophia accepted the plate he offered her, noting that the pancakes were actually perfectly golden this time. "But Ethan, what if she's figured it out? What if she knows we're lying?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering. Over the past 2 weeks, he'd learned to read Sophia's expressions with startling accuracy. Right now, she looked worried, but determined the same expression she wore when discussing a difficult patient. "Even if she suspects something, she doesn't have proof," he said finally. "And Sophia, you've been brilliant at this. Last week, when we ran into her at the museum, you knew details about my childhood that I never told you. That's because I spent 3 hours interviewing your housekeeper," Sophia admitted. "Mrs. Thompson was very helpful once I convinced her I was genuinely trying to help you recover your memories." Ethan laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "You interviewed my housekeeper? And my driver, and my assistant, and that woman who runs the flower shop near my office who's been making my mother's arrangements for 15 years. Sophia grinned. "I'm very thorough when I'm preparing for surgery. This isn't that different. Remind me never to underestimate you," Ethan said, leaning across the small table to kiss her forehead. "You're going to be fine at lunch. You know me better now than most people who've known me for years." It was true. In 2 weeks of living together, Sophia had learned things about Ethan that surprised even him. She knew he was left-handed, but had been forced to write with his right hand as a child. She knew he had a scar on his knee from falling off his bike when he was 7, and that he still felt guilty about lying to his nanny about how it happened. She knew he read mystery novels when he couldn't sleep, that he hummed unconsciously when he was concentrating, and that he made terrible jokes when he was nervous. She also knew that he was kind in ways his public persona never showed. He'd quietly arranged for Mrs. Lee's food truck to cater a fundraiser at Mount Sinai. He'd sent flowers to the nurses who had taken care of him after his accident. He'd spent an hour on the phone helping Sophia's elderly neighbor figure out his new smartphone, displaying patience that would have shocked anyone from his business world. "Sophia," Ethan said quietly, "what we're doing here, it's working. We're working. Whatever my mother is planning, we can handle it together." Sophia nodded, but something in her expression remained troubled. "Ethan, there's something else we need to discuss. Dr. Wong called yesterday, too." Ethan's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "What did she want?" "She wants to see you next week for a final evaluation. She's pleased with your progress and thinks you're ready to start transitioning back to normal activities." Sophia met his eyes steadily. "She thinks your memory is almost fully recovered." The implications hung in the air between them. They'd always known this moment would come, the point where Ethan would have to recover his memory and return to his real life. But somehow, in the blissful domesticity of the past 2 weeks, it had felt like a distant concern. "What did you tell her?" "I told her we'd schedule something for next week. But Ethan, we need to start thinking about what comes next. Your mother expects you to remember everything soon. Your business partners are asking questions about when you'll be back to full capacity. And Charlotte." Sophia's voice trailed off. "What about Charlotte? She's been calling and sending flowers, and yesterday, she stopped by Mount Sinai to ask Dr. Wong about your prognosis." Sophia's jaw tightened slightly. "She's very concerned about your recovery." Ethan reached across the table and took Sophia's hand. "Charlotte is concerned about the merger, not about me. And when my memory returns, she's going to be very disappointed to discover that I remember exactly why I married you instead of her." "But do you?" Sophia asked quietly. "Ethan, when you go back to your old life, when you're surrounded by all the things and people you left behind, will you still want this? Will you still want me?" The vulnerability in her voice made Ethan's chest tighten. He understood her fear. He'd been wrestling with the same doubts. Their relationship had been forged in the bubble of her small apartment, in the context of him playing a role that let him be someone different than he'd ever been before. What would happen when reality intruded? "Sophia Alvarez Caldwell," he said, bringing her hand to his lips. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life. This, us, it's the realest thing I've ever experienced. Do you think I'm going to give that up to go back to a life that was slowly killing me? But your family, your business, will have to accept that Ethan Caldwell has grown up and learned to make his own decisions." Ethan's voice was firm. "Sophia, when this started, I thought I was escaping from one life into a temporary fantasy. But what I've realized is that I wasn't escaping from my life, I was escaping to it, to the life I was meant to live." Sophia studied his face, searching for doubt or uncertainty. Instead, she saw the same steady determination that had characterized every major decision he'd made since she'd known him. "Okay," she said finally, "but Ethan, if we're going to make this work really work, then we need to stop hiding. We need to tell people the truth about how we met, about why we got married, about what this really is. You want to confess to my mother that we've been lying? I want to be honest about who we are and what we want, not the sanitized version we created for public consumption, but the real story." Sophia's eyes were bright with conviction. "Ethan, the truth is better than our lie. We found each other by accident, but we chose each other on purpose. We may have started with deception, but we built something real. That's not something to be ashamed of." Ethan stared at her, overwhelmed by how brave she was. "You want to walk into Eleanor Caldwell's restaurant of choice and tell her that her son has been lying about amnesia for 2 weeks so he could avoid an arranged marriage. I want to walk in there and tell her that her son fell in love with someone who sees him for who he really is, and that no amount of social pressure or family expectation is going to change that." Sophia's smile was fierce. "Besides, what's the worst she can do? Disown you?" "Actually, yes, that's exactly what she could do. Then she'll be missing out on the chance to know the incredible man her son became when he was free to choose his own path." Sophia stood up, suddenly energized. "Ethan, we've spent 2 weeks being afraid of what happens when the truth comes out, but maybe it's time to control the narrative ourselves." Ethan watched her pace around the small kitchen, her mind clearly racing through possibilities and plans. This was Sophia in her element, facing a crisis head-on with intelligence and determination. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking we tell your mother everything today at lunch. We lay it all out, the fake amnesia, the arranged marriage you were trying to escape, how we met, why we decided to make it real. Sophia turned to face him. We take away her ability to expose us by exposing ourselves first. Ethan, that's incredibly risky. So was claiming to be your wife in the first place. So was letting you move in here. So was falling in love with you. Sophia crossed back to the table and took his hands in both of hers. Ethan, I'm tired of waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want to fight for this for us openly and honestly. Ethan looked into her eyes and saw the same fierce determination that had made her walk into his hospital room and claim to be his wife. Sofia Alvarez didn't back down from challenges. She met them head-on with courage and intelligence and an unshakable belief in doing the right thing. You're absolutely crazy, he said. Is that a yes? That's an, I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. And if you want to declare war on Manhattan high society, then I'm right there with you. Ethan pulled her down onto his lap, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. But Sophia, if we do this, there's no going back. My mother might never forgive me. The business relationships could be damaged beyond repair. We could lose everything. We could, Sophia agreed. Or we could win everything that actually matters. She cupped his face in her hands. Ethan, what do you want? Not what your mother wants. Not what's good for business. Not what makes sense strategically. What do you want? Ethan looked at her, this brave, brilliant, complicated woman who had walked into his life by accident and turned it upside down on purpose. He thought about the past 2 weeks, about waking up next to someone who made him laugh, about coming home to someone who was genuinely happy to see him, about building a life based on choice rather than obligation. I want you, he said simply. I want this life we've built together. I want to wake up every morning knowing that the person next to me chose to be there not because it made sense or because someone told them they should, but because they wanted to be. Ethan's voice grew stronger. I want to stop pretending that what we have isn't real just because it didn't start the way everyone else thinks it should have. Sophia's smile was radiant. Then let's go claim our life. 3 hours later, the Plaza Hotel. Eleanor Caldwell was already seated when Sophia arrived at the Oak Room, looking every inch the society matriarch in a cream Chanel suit and pearls that probably cost more than Sophia made in a month. She'd chosen a corner table with a clear view of the entire restaurant, the better to see and be seen, Sophia supposed. Sophia, darling, Eleanor said, rising with the kind of gracious smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. How lovely to see you again. You look refreshed. Sophia had chosen her outfit carefully, a navy dress that was professional but not overly formal. Paired with the small diamond studs that had been her grandmother's, she wanted to look like herself, not like someone trying to play a role. Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell. You look wonderful as always. Sophia settled into her chair, noting that Eleanor had already ordered wine and expensive Sancerre that Sophia recognized from her crash course in wines that rich people drank. I took the liberty of ordering for us both, Eleanor said smoothly. The lobster salad here is exceptional. That sounds perfect. Sophia accepted the wine Eleanor poured for her, using the moment to study her mother-in-law's expression. There was something calculating in Eleanor's eyes, a sharpness that suggested this lunch was indeed more than a social courtesy. Tell me, Eleanor said, settling back in her chair with the air of someone beginning an interrogation. How is Ethan's recovery progressing? Dr. Wong seemed quite optimistic when I spoke with her yesterday. So, Eleanor had been checking up on Ethan's medical progress. Interesting. He's doing very well, Sophia said carefully. His memory is returning gradually, and he's starting to feel more like himself again. How wonderful. And when he does remember everything, what then? Will you be returning to your old life, or will you be joining ours permanently? The question was loaded with implication. Eleanor was asking Sophia to declare her intentions. Was this a temporary arrangement or a permanent claim on the Caldwell name? Ethan and I will build whatever life makes us both happy, Sophia said diplomatically. Whether that means adapting to new circumstances or creating entirely new ones. How refreshingly modern. Eleanor's smile was sharp. Though, I confess I'm curious about something. Ethan's amnesia has been quite selective, hasn't it? Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? Well, he remembers you perfectly, your relationship, your wedding, how you take your coffee, but he seems to have forgotten so many other important details. His responsibilities to the family business, for instance, his long-standing relationship with Charlotte, the merger negotiations that have been in progress for over a year. Eleanor leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving Sophia's face. It's almost as if he's chosen to remember only the things that support his current narrative, and forget everything that might complicate it. The accusation hung in the air between them. Eleanor knew maybe not all the details, but she knew something wasn't right about Ethan's condition. Sophia had two choices: continue the deception and hope Eleanor couldn't prove her suspicions, or do what she and Ethan had decided and take control of the narrative. She chose courage. "You're absolutely right," Sophia said quietly. Eleanor blinked, clearly not expecting such a direct response. "I beg your pardon?" "You're right. Ethan's amnesia has been remarkably selective, almost like it isn't real at all." Sophia met Eleanor's gaze steadily. "Because it isn't." The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor's expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and finally cold fury. "Excuse me? Ethan doesn't have amnesia, Mrs. Caldwell. He never did. The car accident was real, but the memory loss was. Let's call it a performance." Sophia took a sip of her wine, surprised by how calm she felt. He was desperate to avoid the marriage you'd arranged with Charlotte. So he decided to fake a medical condition that would buy him time to figure out an alternative. And you helped him with this deception. Actually, I initiated it. Ethan was planning to just claim confusion and temporary memory loss. I'm the one who showed up at the hospital claiming to be his wife. Sophia's smile was steady. I'm the one who created the elaborate backstory about our secret elopement. Eleanor's face had gone very pale, except for 2 spots of color high on her cheekbones. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Ethan and I decided that we're tired of hiding. We're tired of pretending that what we have isn't real just because it didn't start the way you think it should have." Sophia leaned forward. "Mrs. Caldwell, your son was miserable. He was living a life that fit everyone else's expectations but not his own. He was so desperate to escape an arranged marriage that he was willing to fake a brain injury to avoid it. So, you took advantage of his vulnerability to trap him into marrying you instead." "No," Sophia said firmly. "I gave him a choice. For the first time in his adult life, Ethan had the space to figure out what he actually wanted instead of what everyone else wanted for him. And what he chose was a life with someone who sees him for who he really is." "You're a gold digger," Eleanor said flatly, "an opportunist who saw a chance to marry into wealth and took it. I'm a trauma nurse who makes $63,000 a year and lives in a 5th-floor walk-up in Brooklyn," Sophia replied calmly. "If I wanted to marry for money, I would have found someone much easier to manage than your son. Then what do you want?" Sophia was quiet for a moment, thinking about the question. What did she want? 2 weeks ago, she might have said she wanted to help a stranger escape his family's control. A week ago, she might have said she wanted to see where their fake relationship could lead. Now, she knew exactly what she wanted. "I want Ethan to be happy," she said simply. "I want him to wake up every morning excited about his life instead of dreading it. I want him to feel like he can be himself instead of performing a role that someone else wrote for him." Sophia's voice grew stronger. "And I want to be part of that life because we chose each other, not because someone decided we were suitable." "How romantic," Eleanor said acidly. "And what makes you think you can make him happy? You have nothing in common. You come from completely different worlds. You know nothing about his responsibilities or the pressures he faces." "You're right. We do come from different worlds. But Mrs. Caldwell, in the 2 weeks I've been with Ethan, I've watched him become someone I barely recognize from the man described in newspaper articles." Sophia's eyes were bright with conviction. "He laughs now, real laughter. Not the polite society version. He cooks breakfast and does laundry and reads mystery novels before bed. He talks to my elderly neighbor about her garden and remembers the names of the nurses who took care of him. How wonderfully domestic. But that's not the real world, Sophia. That's a fantasy you've created in your little apartment. When Ethan returns to his actual life with its demands and expectations and responsibilities, your domestic bliss will seem very shallow indeed. Then maybe his actual life is the problem, not our happiness." Sophia set down her wine glass with deliberate precision. "Mrs. Caldwell, I understand that you love your son and want what's best for him, but what's best for Ethan isn't necessarily what's best for the family business or the social expectations or the merger with the Langfords. And you think you know what's best for him better than his own mother? I think Ethan knows what's best for him better than anyone else. And when he's free to choose without pressure or manipulation or guilt, he chooses a life that makes him happy." Sophia's voice was gentle but uncompromising. "He chooses me." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "What do you want from me, Sophia? Approval? Acceptance? My blessing on this elaborate charade? I want you to give Ethan the space to live his own life. I want you to stop trying to control his choices through manipulation and guilt. And I want you to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, a woman who loves your son for who he really is might be better for him than a woman who loves him for who you want him to be. Eleanor stared at Sophia for a long moment, then slowly pulled out her phone. "Ethan," she said when he answered, "could you join Sophia and me for coffee? We're at the plaza." "Yes, now." "No, everything is fine. We just have some things to discuss." She hung up and turned back to Sophia. "Your husband will be here in 20 minutes. I suggest you use that time to prepare him for what's coming next." "What's coming next?" Eleanor's smile was sharp, but not entirely unkind. "The real test, Sophia. If you think convincing me was difficult, wait until you meet the rest of the family and the board of directors and every society reporter in Manhattan who's been wondering why Ethan Caldwell suddenly disappeared from the social scene." Sophia felt a flutter of nervousness, but it was overshadowed by relief. Eleanor wasn't going to expose them. She wasn't going to destroy Ethan's reputation or their relationship. "Are you saying you'll support us?" "I'm saying I'll give you a chance to prove that this relationship is as real as you claim it is." "But Sophia," Eleanor's voice hardened slightly, "if you hurt my son, if this turns out to be an elaborate con game, if you break his heart or damage his reputation, I will destroy you in ways you can't even imagine." "Understood," Sophia said calmly. "But Mrs. Caldwell, if you try to manipulate Ethan or pressure him into abandoning his happiness to serve your agenda, you'll find that I can be just as protective of him as you are." Eleanor actually smiled at that, a real smile, not the society version. "Good," she said. "Ethan deserves someone who will fight for him." When Ethan arrived 20 minutes later, slightly out of breath and clearly worried about what Sophia might have said to his mother, he found them sharing dessert and discussing the logistics of integrating a trauma nurse into Manhattan society. "What's happening here?" he asked, settling into the chair between them. "Your wife," Eleanor said dryly, "has just explained to me that you've been faking amnesia for 2 weeks to avoid marrying Charlotte Langford." Ethan went very still. "Mother, and I've told her that while I disapprove of the deception, I understand the desperation that led to it." Eleanor's voice was carefully neutral. "It seems that I may have been overly invested in planning your life without consulting you about what you actually wanted." Ethan stared at his mother, clearly struggling to process this unexpected turn of events. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that if Sophia makes you as happy as she claims, then perhaps I should focus on supporting that happiness instead of trying to redirect it." Eleanor's smile was small but genuine. "Though, Ethan, we will be having a very long conversation about honesty and communication and the proper way to handle disagreements with your family. Does this mean you're not going to disown me?" Ethan asked, and Sophia could hear the vulnerability beneath his attempt at humor. "It means I'm going to try very hard to remember that my job as your mother is to love and support the man you've become, not to force you to be the man I thought you should be." Eleanor reached over and squeezed his hand, "Though I reserve the right to be annoyed about the dramatics." "Fake amnesia, Ethan? Really? It seemed like a good idea at the time," Ethan said weakly. "It was a terrible idea that worked out remarkably well," Sophia interjected. "If Ethan hadn't faked that amnesia, we never would have met." "And Mrs. Caldwell, I promise you, Ethan may have started this whole thing as an escape plan, but what we've built together is real." Eleanor studied Sophia's face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I believe you, which means I suppose I should welcome you to the family properly." She extended her hand across the table. "Hello, Sophia. I'm Eleanor, your mother-in-law. We seem to have gotten off to a rather unconventional start." Sophia shook her hand, grinning. "Hello, Eleanor. I'm Sophia, your son's wife, and I think unconventional might be our specialty." Ethan looked between them, still slightly dazed by the rapid turn of events. "So, what happens now?" "Now," Eleanor said, signaling for the check, "we figure out how to handle the Langfords, the media, and the fact that half of Manhattan society thinks you've been recovering from a brain injury for the past 2 weeks." She paused, a mischievous glint in her eye. "I suggest we tell them that love is the best medicine and your recovery has been miraculous." "And Charlotte?" Sophia asked. "Charlotte is a lovely girl who deserves someone who actually wants to marry her, not someone who's so desperate to avoid her that he'll fake amnesia." Eleanor's voice was firm. "She'll be disappointed, but she's not heartbroken. Trust me, if Charlotte Langford had been in love with Ethan, she would have been at his bedside every day, not calling to check on merger timelines." Ethan reached for Sophia's hand under the table, squeezing her fingers. "Sophia, are you sure about this?" Once we go public with the real story, there's no taking it back. You'll be under scrutiny from everyone. Ethan Caldwell, Sophia said, her voice warm with affection and certainty. I walked into a hospital room and claimed to be your wife when I'd never seen you before in my life. I think I can handle a little society gossip. Besides, Eleanor added, her tone considerably warmer than it had been an hour earlier. I have some experience managing society gossip. Sophia, if you're determined to be part of this family, then you're going to need to learn how to use the rumor mill to your advantage instead of letting it use you. Sophia grinned. Are you offering to teach me? I am offering to arm you for battle. Because make no mistake, there will be people who disapprove of this match, who will question your motives and your background and your right to be part of Ethan's life. Eleanor's expression was fierce. But they'll have to go through me to get to you, and I don't lose gracefully. Ethan stared at his mother, overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events. Mom, Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see what your new life actually looks like. Eleanor stood, gathering her purse with the efficiency of someone accustomed to command. Sophia, lunch on Thursday. We have a great deal of work to do if we're going to integrate you into society properly. And Ethan, you have dinner with your father tonight. He's going to want to discuss the business implications of your miraculous recovery. As Eleanor walked away, Sophia and Ethan sat in stunned silence for a moment. Did that actually just happen? Ethan asked finally. I think your mother just adopted me, Sophia said. Still processing the conversation. Ethan, she's not what I expected. Eleanor Caldwell never does what anyone expects. It's her greatest strength and her most terrifying quality. Ethan brought Sophia's hand to his lips. Sophia, you were incredible. I can't believe you told her everything. I told you I was tired of hiding. And Ethan, she loves you. It might be complicated and controlling and wrapped up in expectations, but she genuinely wants you to be happy. Sophia smiled. She just needed to understand that happy might look different than she planned. And what about you? Are you happy with how this turned out? Sophia looked around the elegant restaurant, thinking about the conversation she'd just had and the life that was opening up before them. It would be complicated learning to navigate Ethan's world while staying true to herself. Building a real marriage from the foundation of their elaborate deception, proving to everyone that their love was worth the chaos it had caused. But as she looked at Ethan's face, saw the relief and joy and love in his eyes, she knew she'd never been more certain of anything. Ethan Caldwell, she said, leaning over to kiss him softly, I am absolutely, completely, ridiculously happy. Even if your mother is planning to put me through some kind of society boot camp. Especially because of that, Ethan said, laughing. Sophia, when Eleanor Caldwell decides to mentor someone, they become unstoppable. You're about to become the most formidable force in Manhattan society. Good, Sophia said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Someone needs to shake things up around here. As they left the plaza together, hand in hand and no longer hiding behind elaborate deceptions, Ethan felt like he was walking into the life he'd always been meant to live. It had taken a fake accident, a pretend amnesia, and a very real guardian angel, disguised as a trauma nurse to get him here. But now, finally, he was exactly where he belonged. 6 months later, Central Park. Tell me again why we're doing this, Sophia asked, adjusting her wedding dress for the dozenth time. It was a simple but elegant gown, nothing like the elaborate confection Eleanor had initially suggested, but exactly what Sophia had wanted, because, Ethan said, straightening his tie, apparently our elopement doesn't count since it happened in our imagination, and because my mother threatened to plan a wedding with or without our input if we didn't do it ourselves, and because Mrs. Lee insisted we needed a proper wedding if we were going to get our free meal, Sophia added, grinning. They were standing near Bethesda Fountain, exactly where their fictional meet-cute had supposedly taken place. Around them, their friends and family had gathered for what Eleanor had dubbed the most unconventional wedding of the social season, an outdoor ceremony in Central Park, catered by Mrs. Lee's food truck, with guests ranging from Manhattan society fixtures to Sophia's fellow nurses to Mrs. Thompson, the housekeeper. Are you nervous? Ethan asked, taking Sophia's hands in his. Terrified. Sophia admitted. What if we're better at being fake married than real married? Then we'll figure it out together, just like everything else. Ethan's smile was soft and certain. Sophia, 6 months ago, I was so desperate to escape my life that I was willing to fake a brain injury. Today, I can't imagine wanting to be anywhere other than right here with you, surrounded by everyone who matters to us, even Charlotte?" Sophia asked, nodding toward where Charlotte Langford was chatting with Isabella and Max the Great Dane, who had been designated ring-bearer for obvious reasons, especially Charlotte. Ethan grinned. "She's been much more pleasant since she started dating that artist. Apparently, she'd been dreading marrying me as much as I'd been dreading marrying her. Mother's matchmaking skills need some work." "Your mother's matchmaking skills are fine," Eleanor said, appearing beside them with the efficiency of someone who had organized hundreds of social events. "I just needed to understand that sometimes the best matches happen by accident." She kissed both their cheeks. "Are you ready?" Sophia looked around at the assembled crowd, Ethan's family and friends, her makeshift family of colleagues and neighbors. Mrs. Lee beaming from beside her food truck, Dr. Wong, who had graciously agreed to officiate after learning the whole story. It wasn't the wedding she'd dreamed of as a little girl. It was better. "We're ready," she said. The ceremony was everything. Their fake elopement hadn't been real. Vows spoken in front of people who loved them, genuine promises made with full knowledge of what they were committing to, and the kind of joy that comes from choosing love over convenience. When Dr. Wong pronounced them husband and wife for real this time, and Ethan kissed Sophia as Max barked enthusiastically, and Mrs. Lee cheered in Korean, Sophia felt like her heart might burst from happiness. "So," Ethan said against her lips, "how does it feel to be really married to me?" "Exactly the same as being fake married to you," Sophia said, laughing. "Except now I don't have to worry about anyone figuring out our secret." "We still have secrets," Ethan said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "I never told you about the time I actually did get amnesia when I was 12 and convinced my nanny I was a pirate for 3 days. Ethan Caldwell, did you get the idea for your fake amnesia from a childhood head injury?" "Maybe," he said, spinning her around as their guests cheered. "Is that a problem, Mrs. Caldwell?" Sophia looked around at their unconventional wedding party, Eleanor, chatting animatedly with Isabella about medical school applications. Charlotte teaching Sophia's elderly neighbor, Mr. Lin, how to take photos with his phone. Mrs. Lee directing the catering setup with the authority of a general commanding troops, and dozens of other people who had somehow become part of their story. "The only problem," Sophia said, "is that I'm afraid I might be too happy. What if this is all a dream and I wake up back in my old life? Then I'll find you." Ethan said simply, "I'll stage whatever accident necessary, fake whatever condition required, tell whatever elaborate lies needed to get you back." His voice grew serious. "Sophia, you saved me not just from that arranged marriage, but from a life where I was slowly disappearing into someone else's expectations. You gave me permission to be myself, and then you loved who I turned out to be. You saved yourself." Sophia corrected. "I just gave you the space to do it." "We saved each other," Ethan said, and Sophia knew he was right. As the sun set over Central Park and their friends and family celebrated around Mrs. Lee's food truck, Sophia thought about the chain of events that had brought them here: a fake accident, a pretend marriage, a very real love story that had bloomed in the space between deception and truth. It was messy and complicated and completely unconventional. It was perfect, ready for our honeymoon. "Mrs. Caldwell?" Ethan asked as they prepared to leave for their weekend getaway to a small bed and breakfast in the Hamptons, where they decided to start their real marriage. "I've been ready since the moment I walked into that hospital room and decided to rescue a stranger," Sophia said. "Best decision you ever made." Sophia looked at her husband, her real husband now, and felt the same flutter of excitement and possibility she'd felt that first day. "Ask me again in 50 years, she said, but she was already smiling. As they drove away from Central Park, heading toward their future together, Ethan reached over and took Sophia's hand. "Sophia, thank you for everything, for the lie that became the truth, for the accident that led to forever, for teaching me that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never see coming." Sophia squeezed his hand, watching the city lights blur past the window. "Thank you for being worth the leap," she said. And as Manhattan faded behind them and their real life together stretched ahead, both Ethan and Sophia knew that sometimes the most perfect accidents are the ones that feel like destiny. The end.